All right, ladies and gents, welcome back. So, today we're going to be starting our 2-day discussion on the Reformation. Now, what is the Reformation? This is basically, well, what's the key word in there? Reform. We're going to be looking at the reform of something. Now, that something is going to be the Catholic Church. So, for centuries, hundreds of years, the Roman Catholic Church basically had no competition when it came to how people acted and thought religiously. So we have approximately today 2.4 billion Christians in the world. 1 billion of them are Catholics. The remaining 1.4 billion are Christians, but not Catholics. And so that 1.4 is then broken into multiple denominations. So you have your Baptists, you have your Methodists, you have your, Presbyterians, you've got all these different variations of the other 1.4 billion Christians that there are. So what we're going to be talking about today and tomorrow is basically the divisions that have happened with the church, breaking into 2, 3, 4, and basically up to as many as 40 different variations of Christian. Now, quick reminder of the schism. This was one of those first big breaks in the Christian world, and it basically is going to divide the Christian world into two. The majority being under the authority of the Roman Catholic Church, and then we have the Eastern Orthodox. Now, the Pope is going to retain control of the Roman Catholic Church, and then you're basically going to have like a bishop or cardinal type of deal that is like in charge of the Eastern Orthodox. And that's primarily places like Russia, the Balkans, like Greece and Albania, places like that, and influence into, as you can see on that map, places like Turkey, where there is a decent Christian population. Now, humanism is going to introduce some changes into the church. Now, what we're going to see here is, we have that focus on human reason and our potential as humans to rise to the occasion over thinking about only the divine and heavenly things. That, along with ideas spreading into, the North and getting the Northern Renaissance, we're going to see these changes spread into other areas such as Germany, France, and England. Germany being probably the most important one that we get to talk about with this topic, because that is where it's really going to get started. Okay? Now, what's going to happen in the Northern Renaissance that we didn't talk about last time with the Renaissance discussion is the fact that people are wanting to read the Bible themselves so they can grow spiritually and lead a more religious life just on their own, just at home, not only just by going to the church, which only speaks in Latin, so you can't really understand what's going on anyway. Now, humanism is going to call out the church on their nonsense. Erasmus, if you remember him from last time, the big humanism speaker, he is basically going to call the church saying they have lost their way, they no longer care about people's souls, and they care more about being a political powerhouse, and how they focus more on ceremony and ritual than on the simpler things which are more effective. He wrote a book that is called The Praise of Folly, which is laying out his entire case against the church and how, they thinks they don't help anybody be a better person, and is just like they're more focused on going on pilgrimages to holy sites and buying relics, like these items that supposedly Jesus had, like a nail from the cross or a piece of wood from the cross. which there's really no way to back up whether any of these items are legitimate or not. Now, problems in the church. During the Renaissance, people really did think that the Catholic Church had lost its way and that they were more interested in being political leaders than in being spiritual leaders. And that, priests were not like being a priest today. Today, it's the life of sacrifice and hard work. And back during the Renaissance, you were kind of living the high life. You had access to money. You got to rub elbows with all the rich and powerful people of Europe, and you had your own political power. And a lot of times the church would become corrupted. You have corrupt people, becomes a corrupt organization, becomes all about money, and people buying their positions in the church. It's a pretty big problem when you're supposed to be looking after people's souls and you're worried about how am I going to get my hands on all this money so I can build myself a palace out in the countryside. All right, so resistance to what the church is doing is going to lead to what is called the Protestant Reformation. And this is going to give us a new political and economic way of doing things. So we're going to see conflicts that challenge the church in Rome, the Roman Catholic Church. So a big problem is indulgences. This is basically your get out of hell free card. So you could say that you're drunk, you lie, you cheat, you steal, you drop, some money in a box, you get a piece of paper that says, hey, you're pardoned of all your sins, you can go to heaven now. Like, that is something that the church is doing. They're selling these get out of hell free cards, and people are thinking that it's legitimate because it's from the church. The church doesn't lie. That's one of these levels of corruption that I was talking about. Is they use these basically as fundraisers for these big building projects that they have, like building the Vatican. Like the Sistine Chapel would have been funded by things like this. Right? Merchants are going to start challenging the church with something called the usury. Usury was basically people getting money lent to them by the church, and they'd have to pay it back just like any loan, but the interest rates would be excessively high, like way overpriced interest rates. So you'd be paying back, say you took like $1,000 loan. Instead of maybe like a regular loan would be like with a merchant, maybe you pay, $1,100 back so that they make a little profit on the money they loaned you. The church might end up getting, an extra $500 out of you, like a whole 50% more. It's that kind of hike up in the prices is what we're talking about. Now, the nobility in Europe, not just in Germany and England, but in other places too, they don't like that Italians are dominating the church. So the church is making a lot of decisions that are primarily helping only Italy and Italian kingdoms. And yeah, because that's also where the Pope is, the Vatican's there. A lot of Italians have places of power in the church, and it's not the best formula for having peace. All right. Their political power would cause a lot of conflict because what right does the church have in decisions of state? They should be worried about people's souls. And that is when we're going to introduce this gentleman right here, Martin Luther. Very important guy. You definitely need to pay attention to him. Now, he was a monk for the Catholic Church, and he taught religious doctrine and theory and all of that in Wittenberg, Germany, at the university there. He would become a doctor in theology, the study of religion. Now, he through his studies, would come to disagree with a lot of things that the church was doing, and primarily the idea that in order to go to heaven, a person must have faith in Jesus and do good deeds. Now, like, there's a lot of issues with things that he sees. So he's going to see that if good works are part of the equation, then there's no way anyone is good enough in the eyes of God to be saved. So he's going to put forward the idea that the way for people to be saved and get to go to heaven is just by believing in Jesus full-heartedly, and that is all that you need. You don't have to do these great works. You don't have to, build a church. You don't have to go on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. You don't have to give away everything that you have. The big thing is you just need to believe. And not just fake believe, but you need to truly believe. The church didn't like this. Now, he would also see the corruption, and he especially hated the indulgences. That is going to be a very big stickler for him. He wants those basically outlawed. Now, a very important date, October 31st, 1517. This is when he writes 95 Theses and he nails them to the church door in Wittenberg, Germany. Now, these 95 Theses are the 95 problems that he says that the church has. And, he just walks up to the church door, takes out this big piece of paper, nails it to the door, and walks away. Now, this was not a problem. This wasn't like, this wasn't being disruptive or anything. Church doors were basically like a bulletin board for the town. If there was like a wanted poster for a criminal or a reward for a lost dog, that type of stuff, they were posted on the doors of the church because everybody went to the church. They all walked past it at some point. They all looked and they would all see the news. So with these 95 Theses being there, people are seeing them. People are copying them down. They're getting printed up in other languages and sent out throughout the rest of Europe. These ideas are going to spread like wildfire. Now, some of the changes that he wants the church to do. He wants pastors, priests, to be able to be married. He's going to push for a translated version of the Bible into German so that regular people could read it for themselves, and they don't have to go and so they can basically read it for themselves, and they don't have to hear it in Latin, which they can't understand at all. Now, because of these things, he's going to basically go on trial, and it's going to be before the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, in a town called Worms, and it's called the Diet of Worms. So it's like a trial in the town. Now, Charles V, he basically was one of the right-hand men of the Pope, and he would actually put a death sentence on Martin Luther because he would not take back the things that he said against the church. But German princes, like the lesser lords who ruled the different counties in the Holy Roman Empire, a number of them would actually defend Martin Luther, and they would shelter him and hide him from the emperor and protect him. And that is really how the Reformation begins, it becoming a revolution in the church. Now, the people who follow his ideas are called Lutherans, and they follow what is now called Lutheranism. Like me, I grew up going to a Lutheran church. It's similar to Catholic Church, but it has a lot less of the ceremony and the over extravagance with the decorations and everything like that. It's a lot simpler. Now, his ideas would be spread with the printing press. We would get everything in different languages. Something that would work out for the princes, if they left the Catholic Church, they would actually be able to seize the lands of the Catholic Church that are in their domain, and it would then become state-owned, which would actually add to their like pocketbook and get them more money. So now we start having the official split. It's going to lead to some issues. I'm sure you can guess. All right. Now, all these different colors represent different religions or denominations of religions. So like in Russia, you have the Eastern Orthodox. All the yellow, that's your Roman Catholics. Red is Anglican, so like the English church. Purple is Calvinists. They're an interesting group we get to talk about next time. But green, that's Lutherans. Strong base there. All right. Now, some things that are going to start happening outside of Germany. We're going to see people who are going to follow Luther's example. And this is how we get our 40 plus different Christian denominations that we've talked about several times now. Fighting is going to break out. There's going to be a very devastating set of wars that become known as the 30 Years' War. A lot of people are going to die, and we are going to get to talk about that a little bit. Now, this is going to be our last slide for the day. We will be talking more about it tomorrow, but as Lutheranism is spreading and taking influence throughout a large portion of the Holy Roman Empire, the Catholics are going to become weaker, and we're going to start to see people wanting to take back territory for Catholicism. Now, it's just going to be a very big bloody mess. We'll talk about it more tomorrow, but just know that a lot of people are going to die. All right, so that's going to do it for today. And I will talk to you guys next time.